Hello, everyone. My name is Autumn, and the theory that I chose was Transpersonal Theory, and the case that I chose was Debbie's. So, Transpersonal Theory, from what I got out of the reading of the textbooks and the other texts that I looked into, is going beyond oneself or changing beyond what you are now. It involves looking into different aspects of ego and how changing your outlook on your ego changes you almost. Um it has been noted as elusive to some due to the changing nature and meaning of the therapy. It has a lot of different philosophical parts, and it's really rooted in religion and religious faith and having faith in some higher being. It also involves a lot of different techniques and views, as I read in the textbook. It stated a lot about the way that it can be mashed together, like holistic therapy or psychology can be mashed up with um, human transformation and other types of techniques and such. It was an interesting technique to look into, and it gave me a lot of insight into the different approaches that people take when it comes to transpersonal psychology and transpersonal theory. So, just to give you some background, it has been more prevalent in the last 15 years, but as a whole, it was created more than 90 years ago. And I think we all sort of have an understanding of the stemming of it, but some of it is rooted in Maslow's hierarchy, and it was sort of tied into counseling and psychology when Maslow started talking more about it and using more of a spiritual outlook in his counseling and in his thinking. I will say the word a lot, and that's because it was in the text a lot. There is a very spiritual and religious view to this theory, and a lot of what I was able to read into mentioned faith and having a hope for the future and stuff like self-actualization and finding yourself in some sort of higher belief and having some sort of hope for the future or hope of getting better. It's thought that the founder is Ken Wilber, even though there has been people who have changed and added to it, such as Maslow. But he was also thought to have come up with the idea and come up with the approach. And then a lot of the texts that I found to support my limitations and such, which I'll mention further, was a change in Western. It was a change from this idea coming into Western philosophy and adding a lot of different ways that we think into how it worked. And so there's a lot of talk about how the different how it stemmed and how it came over to this side, to the Western side of the world and such, gave it a different outlook almost. As far as developmental perspective, it is it states, it is thinking that our minds are ever changing and evolving. So there's no real stop to a person. People are always changing, even from their environments and such. And such as this, this perspective is almost always changing and getting added to. And I know that goes for a lot of other theories, but this one so much so that, again, like I mentioned earlier, that elusivity just adds a whole nother thing on top of it, and the fact that there are so many different things when it comes to transpersonal theory and so many different views and thoughts on transpersonal theory. Something else that I took away was we cannot change until we look outside of ourselves into higher thinking. So if you don't have any sort of real like faith or religion or hope in anything like outside of yourself, then you're not really getting to, the root of the theory. You're not really changing, and you're not really, getting to those higher stages, as it mentions next. The higher in the stage you are, the more sense of logic and change that you have. You're more open to changing. And I will mention some of the stages in the next slide. It follows a healing and a path of religion belief in the higher up in relation to healing both spiritually and emotionally. Connection to religion is really important in this theory, and having that like belief helps you to heal and helps you to change as like a person, and as you want to change or need to change counseling wise. So some of the stages of functioning that are mentioned in this, the first one is called pre-personal functioning, and it is the satisfaction or satiation of biological needs. It is based on ego, and so at the very root of things, it is you are satisfying yourself before satisfying other parts of your life or others outside of yourself. As weird as that is to explain, you're not thinking outside of yourself or thinking about others outside of yourself. You're thinking all about yourself, and it's based on your ego. You're thinking of your biological needs, and you're satiating those biological needs. The next stage that it talks about is personal functioning. It is considered higher than pre-personal, and it surrounds with an attachment to other things. So the thoughts and feelings you have about attachment or attachments that you have to other things come before yourself, and it drives your behavior. And again, back to that ego, it drives your behavior with that ego, and it shapes who you are as a person, almost. And then the highest and the most ideal level is transpersonal functioning. It is associated with living at a higher knowledge of being beyond yourself. So again, having that thinking of, higher up and higher faith and higher religion almost associates you with a higher level of functioning. And you can almost live, not live better, but function higher than others. As I looked into this more, it was really weird, and it was kind of confusing to me at first, but you have to they're so broadly arranged into the groups, but they're basically cognitive stages of change, and the change that you want to see that you're going through during counseling. So the case study that I chose to go with was Debbie. Her case study is as such. Debbie is the 12-year-old white girl, and until last year had a good relationship with Bill, her mother's boyfriend. Debbie has attended church regularly with her mom, Julie, and appears to be into boys. Until last year, she was a popular student making A's and B's and involved in several clubs at school. She excelled at playing soccer. Both Julie and Bill regularly attended her soccer games and supported her. However, her grades have begun to slip, and she dropped out of her clubs and sports. She has made some new friends and tends to spend more and more time at their house because things suck at home. Her mom and Bill fight over money, and Bill not working enough to contribute to the family. Debbie has also noticed that her mother has been drinking more wine lately, almost every day. Debbie and Bill have been getting into serious arguments about trivial things. She has been sent home from school for being late, although she is leaving the house on time. Debbie wants to hang out with her friends, and when questioned about the decline in her academic performance, she states, "I know I am smart, so it's not a big deal if I get C's." So, the basics are she's a 12-year-old white female. The presenting issues that I was able to see were her family life, the fights between her parents and guardians, and the fact that she has no more outlet for these connections because she dropped out of her clubs and sports. So now she really only has her friends for support, and the effects from family on her schooling. So also her grades dropping, and she has those new friends, but the contact with her other friends seems to have dropped as well. So some strengths and barriers I saw based through this theory, and again, due to its religious outlook, the fact that she goes to church, and it doesn't state directly, but may or may not be religious, and the fact that she also has a support and friend group to, kind of guide her to that change and, being outside of herself or outside of the problem almost. The barriers that I saw were her needs aren't being met. So I'll go into Maslow's thoughts about this and the hierarchy of need. Um, her friends and behaviors also might be a barrier through this perspective just because of the way that it mentions that she's hanging out with these new friends. And the environment that's going on, the fighting environment, and this sort of, and I'll mention it later on as well, but this sort of theory has a background on holistic things such as nature and meditation and yoga and bettering yourself in those sort of ways as well. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs. First of all, looking into it, she has her physiological, and looking at this, we can take away that she does have some physiological needs. She has food, water, and rest. She has safety, which it could be a concern that her parents are always fighting, and something could come of that. Her love and belonging is questionable just because her parents are fighting, and she seems to only really be getting that support from friends, and it doesn't seem like her mother is giving her a lot of attention. And it's thought that before she can transcend and be her better self almost, and that better change, those needs have to be met, and since they're not being met, it's a problem for moving up in that chain in those stages. So some goals I laid out for her were to get back into studying for her grades, and so she can start studying for 30 minutes 3 days a week, then gradually increase with time. She can connect back with some older friends and reach out to at least one old friend before next session. And the last thing she can do is talk to her mom about how she feels. And based on this meditation and the idea of the holistic sort of view and getting beyond yourself, she can start writing a letter about how the situation makes her feel and slowly build confidence in order to share it. This would give her time to think it over, sort of meditating or having that sort of mindfulness as she's going through it in order to get into sharing it with her mother. Some of the major constructs of this therapy that I would use in her case would be the change process. So it's changing to take on that higher version of yourself, so the person that you want to be, and getting yourself there and getting yourself into that picture. And so in the case of counseling, having religion and the fact that she does go to church, just sort of encouraging her to the fact that she has that faith, using that to sort of steer her into helping her get support for her problem. The next one was mindfulness. So practicing mindfulness and just, again, mindfulness, thinking outside of yourself, which is what this whole thing is based on, and transcending from your ego and your behavior. So meditating and being able to hear your thoughts and sort of relax and cope with those emotions. So she could use this as a way of coping and calm to reach the goal of talking with family about the issues going on, or, even reach out and get some support from others in her community for her mother's problems. States of mind. So this was listed in the textbook, and it was described as seeing the best in something in order to keep faith and joy. So it could be used to help her see the plus side of things and sort of help steer her back into, her academics and socializing and transcend and get her to where she used to be and, back into those things that she enjoys. So some considerations, and there wasn't too much that I found based on her gender. There wasn't really anything that I could find as a consideration to take into account. Same with race. Socioeconomic sort of reflects the hierarchy of need. So if she's not getting, a sufficient home life based on Maslow's hierarchy of need, she might struggle into getting back up into, that higher stage and the higher stages of self-actualization and transcendence. For physical and intellectual, there wasn't really anything that I saw. The only consideration to take into account is where she used to be and, getting back there. So she used to be an A and B student, and now she's, getting C's. Her sexual orientation didn't really need to be taken into account. As far as her religion, she goes to church. However, it's good for her to have this religion, and it'll help, push her back into that need of, transcendence and self-actualization. And, seeing herself and being, happy with her full self. And again, like I said before, it doesn't state if she's religious or not. It simply states that she goes to church. Some limitations about this theory are there's not much research based around it, and because there's so much to it and it's changing so much, it's kind of broad in the way it thinks. Something I found from another article was the fact that it helps to have lived experiences, and it works better in adults with more experience and belief in religion. And then, does transpersonal theory fit me? As far as values, it kind of fits me. I like the ideas that it has. I like the idea of being able to, have belief in something higher and kind of use that as a guiding force for, counseling and such. The skill set is something that I would say that I enjoy. I like the idea of also being able to use, mindfulness and meditation and holistic thinking in order to help someone heal. Is it my preferred style? Definitely not. As far as development, I think there is, I think that I could, develop more outside of the style. I wouldn't say that the development fits me very well. And these are my references, and thank you.